Nori drew in a deep breath, and in addition to the air, he took in a long and undisturbed sense of dread. It soaked the ground like a lingering miasma that was never cleared away. The area was eerily still, quiet, and empty. A pair of buildings stood at the far end of the stone courtyard. One of the buildings was a large 3-story structure that was shaped like an L, while the other was obviously a shrine. Nori didn't have to see inside to know it most likely contained a giant statue of Saito, the holy figure of enlightenment. Faint howling could still be heard, and yet it didn't hinder the sense of growing unease inside his stomach. Apisa observed the area nervously, and her usual smile was concealed behind her apprehension. Rayko also appeared without her calm and controlled nature, which again was quite understandable. Flara, on the other hand, grinned from ear to ear. She kept staring between the two buildings at the far side of the courtyard, with the majority of her attention being on the larger building.
I can't believe that we're really here. This place is so...
dreadfully empty?
Something out of a scary story?
Oh, we're probably fine. I mean, the Sushigomo aren't coming after us, so that's a good thing.
Maybe, but it may actually be a bad thing.
Flara's delight fell away ever so slightly, and she, Rayko, and Apisa all regarded him.
What do you mean, a bad thing?
The Tsuchigumo we spoke to said something about this place being forbidden, or something like that. There was a reason that the spiders settled at another area of the forest rather than here. I'm not certain, but I have a feeling we should be very cautious with how we proceed. I would also prefer us to be out of the forest before nightfall.
Well, that doesn't leave us a lot of time to do stuff. It's already past midday, so I think I agree with Mr. Nori.
I also agree with the Onistan. Flara, I know you want to camp out and read everything this place has to offer, but let's make this first trip a quick review of its treasures, yes?
Fine. I'm just glad we're here. Let's check out the shrine first and store our horses there.
Nori led the others to the shrine. Just as he expected, the large stone statue of a sitting man took up most of the interior of the shrine. The man was depicted as having eyes closed, and his hands rested in his lap. There was a large wraparound set of walls surrounding the shrine, with only one open entryway leading into the statue. 2 railings were to the left and right of the statue. Nori dismounted and then tied his horse reins to the railing. He moved to help Flara with her horse, but then he noticed the 3 mages staring at something behind him. Their eyes were wide and their mouths small. Nori glanced behind him. Words were carved into the wall of the shrine.
Avoid the shadows. Be gone before sunset. The darkness is dangerous. Please, Saito, sit.
Nori licked his lips, and then he glanced on the floor of the shrine. An old, rusted metal object lay at the base of the wall, where it touched the floor. Nori picked it up and turned it over in his hands. Flara, who had dismounted as he regarded the wall, inched her face close to the object in his hand. Moments later, Rayko and Apisa crowded around him as well.
What is it?
It looks like a very old knife.
Are we sure we want to see what's inside Mao Fun?
Listen, I understand if you all don't want to go inside, but I have to. I don't know why, but I just know something interesting is inside.
Darling, we will not let you face whatever is in that horrid place alone. You will have both of us right beside you.
And Nori, don't forget him.
If it is your desire to go inside, I'll be there with you, most definitely. At least we know to be concerned about the dark. Did anyone bring any torches?
Oh, do not worry about that, Mr. Nori. One of the many wonders I can create is light. I will simply conjure a lantern holder with a large lamp. We should be quite safe if it's only shadows to fret with.
I'm certain there are more than just shadows to fret with.
Well, no duh, Mr. Nori. Still, you don't have to say it out loud. We already know.
Thank you all. I couldn't have made it here or have the courage to go inside without you. All of you. Before we go, let's give a silent prayer to protect our horses.
Not to sound blasphemous, but praying to Saito didn't help whoever left the message.
Good point. Still, maybe he didn't finish the prayer. I'd still feel a little better to offer a prayer than not.
I think I'd feel better too, honestly. I was just pointing out that, you know what? Never mind.
Flara, Apisa, and Rayko stood before the great statue of Saito and placed their hands together in a praying gesture. When Nori went to do the same, the mages looked at him.
Wait, Onistans know about Saito? And believe in him? I thought you all worshipped Oni or something.
Just because we live in the mountains doesn't mean we don't know about what goes on in the lowlands. Besides, the great Saito came to Onista once, long ago. And yes, I believe in Saito. As for Oni, my people hunt and kill Oni.
Nori closed his eyes, and he assumed the others did the same. His mind cleared, and he sent a silent prayer to the great and immortal prophet.
Almighty Saito, great teacher and prophet of enlightenment, please watch over the horses, watch over the women I am guarding, and please allow me to honor the great legacy of the Onistans. Please help me to endure this egregious trial set before me.
Nori opened his eyes and noticed the others watching him, with more than a bit of amusement.
What?
Oh, nothing. It's just a pleasant surprise to know that we, share something so intrinsic and meaningful. It's just really nice. So, are we all ready to explore the actual facility?
Try not to sound too excited. We were just given a dire warning after all.
Yes, I know.
Nori led the way, and as they approached the building, he studied it. A dozen windows stared out into the world, hollowed and ominous like empty eye sockets. The structure had been made from wood, and while there was some evidence of time wearing away the exterior color, the structure stood with apparent sturdiness. A single set of double doors stood as the entrance to the building. However, the doors had been split open, with the center of the doors being broken. Wooden debris and large splinters covered the front of the stone before the door. Darkness existed within the confines of the building. Nori approached the area where the wooden debris laid. He held his tetsubo at the ready, and he slightly crouched down toward the splinters.
So since the broken remains of the doors are on the outside, I guess something wanted to get out really badly.
Nori glanced at the building once more. Specifically, he took note of the many windows. Each of the windows were filled with dark, tinted window panes and intact metal frames. None of the windows were opened or damaged in any way.
This does appear to be the only way in or out. Perhaps the ancient mages did something to the windows to ensure they couldn't be penetrated.
Yes, that would make sense. At the university, all the doors and windows are spell-enhanced for the protection of the students within, and also the people outside unless one of the mages or mage students do something reckless. It would make sense for the administrators to do the same thing here if they were in fact conducting darker experiments.
It looks pretty dark in there.
Not to worry, darling. This is where I come to the rescue. Watch and be amazed again.
Rayko's tattoo shimmered wildly for a moment, and suddenly, a group of 4 muscular men stood around the group. The men were all as tall as Nori, with incredibly chiseled physiques, only tiny little loincloths covering their waists, and they all carried singular, unlit lanterns.
Those men are certainly dressed interestingly.
Well, of course they are. All right, my fellows. 2 of you move in first, and the other 2 trail us. Keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary.
Yes, O great and beautiful Creator.
Just as Rayko had commanded, 2 of the lantern carriers moved into the dark building first. As soon as they did, the lanterns they carried burst to life. Immense illumination filled the chamber, and the shadows melted back. Nori moved after the first pair of lantern carriers, followed by Apisa, then Flara and Rayko. The last 2 lantern carriers moved in last. The group stood in the lobby of the research facility. A couple of leather couches lay against the far wall, although large grooves had been carved into the fabric long ago. The surface of the couch's seat had been stained and had some discoloration in various spots. There was also a front desk to the right of the entrance. Nori peeked over the desk. The floor was wood, and several dark stains covered the wood in various spots. Everything was eerily silent, and Nori's nerves throbbed within himself. None of the other girls said anything, and they kept taking in their surroundings, much like Nori did. There were 2 doorways, one leading straight and the other to the right on the other side of the front desk. The 4 lantern carriers positioned themselves in the room, so light covered every inch of the floors, walls, and ceiling. Nori moved toward the doorway to the right, and he held his tetsubo at the ready. Light flowed into the hallway, and there appeared to be several rooms that lined the hallways. Flara moved up to Nori, and she looked down the hallways.
Let's go down this hallway. Will you lead the way, Mr. Nori?
Nori nodded, and one of the lantern carriers walked ahead of Nori as he moved into the corridor. Another lantern carrier walked beside him, but Flara was right beside the second carrier. They came to the first set of doors, one on either side. Both rooms were smaller, with desks, shelves, and other such things in them.
These look like offices. Maybe this is where the mages did research?
You may be right. Let's split up and scout them 2 by 2. We won't really be apart per se, since we'll all be right across the hall from one another.
Very well. 2 of the lantern carriers shall remain in the halls, keeping an eye out, while 1 will go into the rooms with each group. How about you go with Nori, while Apisa goes with me?
Yes, that will be great for balancing, just in case.
Nori, Flara, and one of the lantern carriers moved into the office. Flara went to the desk where several scrolls and papers were stacked. The lantern carrier stood off to the side against the wall, and he kept staring all around. Nori went to the bookshelves. There were several small stacks piled on many of the bookshelves, so he started picking them up and examining them. He unrolled them and read the title lines listed at the beginning of the scrolls. The topics were all quite obscure. Anatomy of a Tengu, the Red Kappa Experiment, a treatise on combining chemicals, Inanokian embalming techniques, changing genders. Nori kept looking through the various kinds of scrolls, and then it occurred to him.
Miss Flara, I have a question. What am I even looking for?
Flara only looked back at him for a brief moment, and then returned her attention to the desk.
Looking for? I'm not sure. Anything that looks interesting to you, I guess. While I would love to examine anything and everything we could find, I suppose I am looking for what happened to devastate this place.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It'll help me in my search. This all just appears to be research topics of various kind. Nothing's really standing out just yet.
I may have found something. I'll tell the girls once we're in the hallway, so I won't have to repeat it multiple times.
Once Flara was finished, she and Nori waited in the hall for the others to be finished as well.
Did you all find anything interesting?
All I found was various research notes on other arcane fields other than any of the ones we study. Apisa found something, though.
It wasn't much, really. Just a couple of journal notes indicating that whoever worked in that room was nervous about whether some kind of containment chamber would hold. It was kind of vague, so I'm not sure what they were talking about.
That is interesting. I found similar journal notations. The researcher in our room discussed various anatomical observations of both living and dead yokai. It seems that there was some sort of unethical experimentation going on. That's alarming.
So why is it alarming? Other than the fact that experimenting on living things is, by itself, a horrific act?
It's alarming because it's against the code of ethics that each and every student and mage researcher has to agree to. It seems that this facility might have been willingly violating those ethics rules.
Or they were not adopted at the time this place was in operation.
I don't know which would be more upsetting. Willingly violating the sanctity of life? Or operating in an unrestricted environment where such things are not seen as important enough for consideration. Let's go to the next set of rooms.
Nori and the others slowly moved down the hallway towards the next set of offices. Like before, Nori and Flara went into one room, and Rayko and Apisa went into the other. This time, Flara reviewed the shelves and scrolls stored within them, while Nori went to the desk. That particular desk was almost empty, with the exception of a single scroll resting in the center of it. Nori slowly unrolled it and read it to himself in his mind.
4th day of autumn. Despite the beauty of the changing leaves, I am quite disturbed over how unfair this place can be. Chiwa has only been at this facility for a year, and she gets to study the artifact before I do? That's totally unfair. She must be sleeping with the director. That is the only way she would gain access to it before someone like me, someone who has immense seniority. It's one of the oldest relics in the entire empire, and it's one of 5. The other 4 pieces are lost, but we have this one. Well, we don't have it. The stupid director has it in his office. I would give anything to examine the piece. By Saito's grace, even I'd sleep with the director. I'd sleep with every single person here so long as I could hold the piece afterwards.
Nori, did you find something?
Maybe. Here, take a look at this.
Flara gently took the scroll from Nori and reviewed it. Her eyes twinkled as soon as she glanced up from the page.
That does sound interesting. But it's still no clue as to what happened here. None of the research in this room had any useful information.
Likewise, Rayko and Apisa didn't find anything either. They moved into the 3rd set of rooms. Nori moved toward the shelves, while Flara rummaged through the assortment of scrolls on the desk. Nori studied the titles of the scrolls. Mating habits of the Oni. Magical attributes associated with the great Saito. The Umbarkui, shadow yokai. Nori stopped and then continued reading the last scroll.
The Umbarkui are a dreaded race of strange yokai who dwell in the depths of the shadows and dark places. It is uncertain as to whether they are natural to this land or if they came from somewhere else. What is known is that they are some of the most dangerous creatures ever studied. The Umbarkui are pack yokai who move and hunt in packs of at least 20. One Umbarkui always carries around the mystic black lantern, which is theorized as their anchor to our plane of existence. If you snuff out the flame in the lantern, it theoretically defeats the pack of Umbarkui temporarily, and...
Nori stopped and glanced up at Flara, who was peeking over the top of the scroll Nori was reading, perhaps trying to read it upside down. She was actually quite close to him, and he couldn't help but grin.
Sorry. You appeared really enthralled by what you were reading, and so I didn't want to disturb you. But I also really wanted to know what you were reading.
No, it's fine. This is about some kind of shadow yokai. Here, read it for yourself.
Just like before, Nori handed Flara the scroll. She read it.
Maybe this is what the message meant. Maybe the Umbarkui got out of control and devastated the mage researchers? From the later part of the scroll, it indicates that the researchers were trying to find means of being able to use these lanterns to control these shadow yokai.
For what purpose?
They were trying to weaponize them.
Rayko and Apisa moved into the room.
Did you find anything? You haven't come out yet, so we decided to come to you.
Yes, Nori found something. It appears that there are these shadow kami, called Umbarkui. The researchers were trying to study them, and perhaps find methods to control them.
Yes, well, we found something in that same vein of thought. There were more scrolls discussing the idea of containment and study. There were also a few research scrolls related to modifying Tsushigumo specimens for use in potential conflicts.
Potential conflicts? Did the researchers use those words exactly?
Yeah, they did. Both of us read it, and it said,
My lady, something was in the hallway. A strange figure.
The eyes of the mage companions went wider, and Nori moved into the hallway with his Tetsubo ready. When he glanced down either end of the hallway, they were both empty.
There's nothing there now. Are you sure you saw something?
Yes, I was not able to make out details, but there was something there. It stood in the doorway to the lobby, and then moved to the right.
Did it go through that other door?
Perhaps so. So, should we continue as we had been, or go investigate the other door?
For a long moment, none of the women said anything.
Let's go find out whatever that something was.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Nori moved into the hallway, although one of the lantern carriers walked a single step ahead of him. Despite the lantern carrier's presence, Nori was all alone up front. Yes, Apisa was there to engage in melee combat, something she was actually quite impressive at, but he would prefer to avoid that scenario. He followed the hallway until it came back to the lobby of the building. A profound sense of dreadful quiet radiated in the air. When Nori sniffled in through his nose, he caught the dusty fragrance of something slightly sour. Nori moved past the second doorway to his right, and he kept his Tetsubo out in front of him. A set of stairs wrapped up the back hallway, leading up. Before he started up them, he glanced back to Flara and the others to confirm that they were still there. Strangely, they huddled close together, and they all peered at Nori expectantly. Nori slowly moved up the stairs. Whenever he placed his weight on the old wood, the stairs groaned a little, announcing that he was on his way up. His skin crawled with sickening malice, and yet what was his other option? There was a doorway at the top of the stairs leading into another hallway. Nori and the lantern carrier moved inside. The eyes of the lantern carrier darted about as well, as if he were a real person. It was such a small thought at the moment, but Nori wondered if the most powerful of the three was the illusionist. The hallway was actually quite large, with enough space for them all to walk in side by side. Still, Nori was a few paces ahead of the girls, and all four lantern carriers walked in a square formation around them. Nothing moved in the shadows, and yet the hairs on the back of Nori's neck bristled with dancing energy. Something was here, for the sour smell intensified. 4 doors lined the hallway. Nori motioned for the first doorway on his left and gave Flara a brief nod. One of the lantern carriers moved inside, and Nori followed. The interior of the room was quite large, with a series of large cages against the far wall. Each of the bars of the cages were quite thick, and they appeared different somehow than any of the other cages Nori had ever seen in his lifetime. The light seemed to reflect off of them in a subtle but noticeable way. Sketches and other unrolled scrolls were nailed to the walls. As soon as the 3 girls were inside the room, another one of the lantern carriers moved inside. The doors to the cages were opened. Flara and Apisa moved up to the sketches, while Rayko moved up to the cages.
That's an anatomical sketch of a Tsuchigumo, with details listed off to the side.
Yes, and the notes are discussing means of psychological conditioning and indoctrination. This is not the kind of work the university sanctions.
Maybe not now, but maybe they used to. Mao Fun was lost for a long time.
Ladies, please come over here. I want to confirm something with you.
Nori strolled to the other opened cages. He glanced inside, but they appeared just as empty as the one that Rayko, Apisa, and Flara stood beside. The doors to the cages were quite large, even by his standards. When considering the size of the average Tsuchigumo, it might have been appropriate.
Do you see the etchings on each of the bars here? These cages were spell-enhanced to keep yokai inside. When the cages were closed, there was no way the creatures inside could have gotten out.
To make something like this, it would have required advanced creation mastery. If this sort of knowledge still exists, it's either kept for the more advanced students, or has been lost.
If the yokai couldn't get out, I wonder how the doors opened. Something obviously opened them and perhaps set the yokai free. The question is, why?
The trio of women all peered at him wonderingly, as if they had forgotten he was there at all. A few odd moments passed, and then they looked at one another.
Mr. Nori is right. Let's check out the other rooms.
Nori walked into the hallway and he peered at the edge of the light. For a brief moment, he noticed something in the dark. A pair of blood-red eyes were there for a moment, and then they closed. They didn't come back. When Nori didn't move, the girls stopped.
What is it?
Be very careful. I saw one of them.
By Saito's grace.
Nori moved into the hallway with his Tetsubo held out in front of him. What did he really hope to do against shadows with his club? Still, a small and flickering sense of warmth swirled inside him the tighter he gripped the handle. Flara and the others stepped into the hallway and positioned themselves behind Nori.
So, shall we go investigate the other rooms?
I have a different idea. I'm going to need you to protect me unless this goes badly, okay?
Why do I get the feeling we're going to hate your idea?
Flara simply beamed a small smile at Rayko and Apisa, and then stepped up next to Nori. She straightened her back, held her hands to the spot just below her throat, and peered into the dark.
Why don't you come out to face us if you're still out there? We don't mean you any trouble.
A long moment of silence trailed Flara's summons. But then the air started to warble. A single form appeared in the far doorway, although it was still too far to really make out details. The room beyond the door was bathed in blackness.
Come into the dark to speak.
She's not going into the shadows to speak with you. We received warnings about you.
Warnings? From whom? From the mages who operated this hellish prison. If you will not come to me, then I shall come to you. I shall test your claim of meaning no trouble for myself.
The figure stepped into the light, and as soon as he did, his body started hissing loudly. Nori's mouth dried up instantly, and his dry tongue scraped against his teeth. A tall, muscular entity stepped down the hallway. It looked like a wolfman-like creature, except it had no hair to speak of. Its gray skin had a slight sheen to it, although it started to redden the longer the creature remained in the light. Like a wolf, the creature had a muzzle and a maw full of sharp teeth. Its pointed ears were at the top of its head. The yokai had sharp claw fingers, and it wore a set of the blackest armor Nori had ever seen. It was so dark that it appeared to draw in the light from Rayko's illusions. The monster was barefoot, and had large paw-like appendages at the end of its long legs. It was even taller than Nori was, perhaps by at least a foot. A long and curved sword was at the monster's side, although it was still sheathed. Nori stepped in front of Flara, and the monster's eyes focused on him. It didn't move for its own weapon, and it even stopped within 2 feet of Nori.
The light hurts you, doesn't it?
Yes, but it is an endurable pain, comparable to what your kind did to us and many others ages ago. I am here to speak. If you are also interested, lower your light so we may discuss things on equal comfort.
And you promise you won't try and kill us if we do?
If I wanted you dead, then you would be dead.
You would fail and die in the attempt.
You are an Onistan, yes. I have fought against your kind before. Your people are mighty, but they are still killable. I would succeed, and you would die in the attempt.
That's enough, both of you! Rayko, could you please have 2 of your lantern carriers lower their lights?
Are you sure about this, darling?
Yes, I'm confident that we could defeat this creature if it does attack. But it came into the light without its weapon drawn. If we could avoid violence, then I'd like to take that chance.
Rayko gave a brief sigh, and then she nodded to 2 of the lantern carriers. Their lights went out completely, and the other 2 lantern holders moved further back into the hallway, so that Nori and the others were still in the light, but the monster was not. More creatures looking similar to the first moved from the back hallway, perhaps about 20, but they stayed toward the entrance of the room. The first creature's body stopped hissing, and his wounds started healing silently and slowly.
My name is Ochono, and we are the Umbakwi.
My name is Twisha Flara, and these are my friends. We are not here to hurt you. We were only interested in finding this place.
Why are you so interested in this place? Are you planning on resuming the atrocities done here? We will not be held captive again.
No, we're not here to do any atrocities. This facility has been lost for over 1,500 years. We honestly had no idea what was going on here, only that it was rumored to have been a place of dark research.
It was more than just dark research, Twisha Flara. Did you say 1,500 years? Has it truly been that long? If you mean us no harm, then we demand that you free us so that we may finally return home.
Free you? What binds you to this place? It's your lantern, isn't it? Some of the research downstairs mentioned something about a lantern.
The leader of this place kept our lantern in his office on the 3rd floor. We are not able to retrieve it. He used some of your strange magics to keep us out. And so we have rotted in this hell for over 1,500 years.
How did they even get the lantern? You all look so formidable, and I doubt getting it from you was something easy.
Ochono glanced past Nori and Flara to the blonde mage, who had stepped out to be in the view of the shadow yokai.
We are the Umbakwi, hunters and warriors from a place beyond comprehension. Our people use ancient rituals to send our lanterns into other worlds, waiting for the people of that world to find it. Once they do, they are able to ignite the lantern and summon us to fight for them. We were summoned here by one such greedy lord. Word of our lantern spread across the land, and your people, the mages, use their spells to trap us long enough to steal the lanterns from the lord.
So, whoever holds the lantern is able to control you?
No, only the original igniter can make requests of us, for contracts are made and bound in blood. We, the Umbakwi, may only exist in your world within a close proximity of the lantern, for it is our anchor. If we stray too far, or we die, we dissolve into mist and reform near the lantern's radius. The mages killed the Lord and kept the lantern away from us. Under normal circumstances, when the original igniter dies, we simply blow out the fire in the lantern and be set free.
Only the mages of over 1,500 years ago prevented you from doing so. So you have been trapped.
Yes.
And you want us to get you the lantern so you can blow it out?
Yes, we want to be free.
And how do we know you won't kill us once we give you the lantern?
Twisha Flara, we are so tired. We have existed in this place, unchanging and silent for a millennium, and we just want to go home. If you do this for us, we promise to leave you in peace.
I will help you, but I want to ask you some questions first.
I will answer 3 questions and no more. We are eager to be on our way.
I suppose I can understand that. Okay, what were the mages of ancient times trying to do here?
Tried to do? What they did was torture and study my kind for many, many years. They brought in other creatures for us to fight with, feed upon, and interact with. They butchered innocent lives and conducted their studies. They whispered about things when they did not think we were listening. These humans of ancient times were afraid. Deathly afraid, and it led them to darker paths.
What were they frightened of? Why were they so interested in weaponizing yokai?
The humans whispered about something they had banished long ago. Something they wished to remain forgotten, though they never said the name of whatever horrible nightmare they sought to free themselves from. They certainly paid it homage in their fears and their attempts to build up paltry defenses. As for why they were trying to weaponize us and the many other creatures they imprisoned here, they sought to build an army of meat to save them from their doom.
What sort of...
You asked your 3 questions, and we have provided you with 3 answers. Now, honor your bargain and open the door to the leader's chamber, so we may be finally free of your accursed world.
Oh, you're right. I did ask 3 questions. Thank you for telling me what you did. As promised, my friends and I will go to the 3rd floor and open whatever we have to. And your promise to leave us in peace still stands?
It does.
Flara gave Nori one pleading look before she moved toward the edge of the light. Nori moved beside her, and he leaned his Tetsubo against his shoulder. When they got up to Ochino, he actually stood between the shadow yokai and Flara. The Umbarqui's eyes never turned away from Nori's, and when they passed him, Ochino moved behind Nori, keeping stride on the other side opposite of Flara. Rayko and Apisa hurried after, and the lantern carriers followed at a distance as well. The other Umbarqui were all larger and more beefy than Nori was as well, sharing similar facial and body traits as Ochino, with the addition or variation of scars, ear shape, and size, and other such things. The Umbarqui parted ways when Flara and Nori approached, and they watched them with pleading, weary eyes. The stairwell leading up to the 3rd floor was beyond the next large room, where various sorts of tables, corkboards, and notes of academic research topics were located. Flara didn't linger there or even pass a glance at all of the interesting material that, if circumstances were different, would have enticed her. No, she moved with determination, and she kept her eyes forward. Nori still watched the shadow yokai around them, but they moved around the group with an anxious sort of tension. It wasn't an aggressive sort of energy, but one of long-awaited anticipation, and perhaps the achievement of a long-desired reprieve. At the top of the stairs, Flara, Nori, and the others came to a room with a set of large double doors. The doors were closed, and runes were carved along the doorframe on the outside of the doors. Nori, Flara, Apisa, and Rayko approached the door, but the Umbarqui stayed at the top of the stairs.
Oh, now I understand. You and your kind are not able to get into the room because of this.
Can you please explain it for someone who doesn't know anything about magic?
Do you see the rune scripts along the edges of the doorway? Those are powerful warding spells that prevent any yokai, kami, or any other sort of creature from approaching the doorway. I'm betting there are similar rune protections along the windows of that room, too, huh?
Yes, we have tried everything to get in that room. The building has been enhanced with your magics, so that we are not able to break through walls or floors, or even burn this place down.
That does make sense. The university in Jedi has similar protections. At least being fireproof, anyway.
Flara moved up to the set of double doors and she touched them. With the gentlest of pushes, she slid the doors open. The Umbarqui all stiffened up, and their mouths closed tightly. Flara moved inside, and so Nori, Rayko, and Apisa did as well. The room was a fairly large office with a desk at the far side of the room. A skeletal remains leaned over the top of the desk, with a rolled-up scroll beside what remained of the fingers. The robes of the skeleton were actually quite nice, although they were dusty and faded with time. There were large shelves built into the walls of the office with stacks of rolls, strange artifacts, and skulls on shelf spaces. One such artifact was a large black lantern with a bright black flame within its confines. It flickered softly, as it most likely had for the last 1,500 years. Flara moved over to the lantern, picked it up, and walked back to where the Umbarqui stood. As soon as she emerged from the office, Ochino reached out, although his hand pressed up against an invisible barrier.
There it is. It's right there. Please, Twisha Flara, give it to us.
Flara walked over to Ochino, held the lantern past the edge of the barrier, and waited for the Umbarkwi leader to take the lantern from her. His clawed hands danced over hers, and it wrapped around the exposed area of the lantern's ring. He took it from her and then stepped back further away from her.
You can't know what this means to us, Twisha Flara. We have dreamed of this for too many sleepless nights and days. You have freed us.
I'm sorry that mages of the ancient past tortured you. That sort of behavior isn't tolerated in this day and age. It doesn't matter what they were scared of. You should have not been treated so poorly.
Be warned, Twisha Flara. The doom that inspired so much fear in ages past no doubt exists today. If this accursed place was lost, then perhaps knowledge of your forgotten nightmares were also lost. Be ready, and good luck.
Ochino raised the lantern up to his face. He drew in a deep breath, and then he blew the black flame. In an instant, the bodies of the Umbarkwi dissolved into ash, with Ochino being the last to fade. The lantern fell, but it crumbled to ash before it made it to Flara's reactionary outstretched hands. Ash pieces that covered the floors and Flara's hands faded into nothingness seconds later.
Wow, they're gone. Just like that.
Flara moved back inside the office and went for the skeleton, who laid on the front of the desk.
There's something else here. Nori stumbled across some reference to it when we searched the offices on the first floor. Look for anything out of the ordinary. Well, anything more out of the ordinary than anything else we've seen thus far.
Nori moved over to one of the shelves and he glanced over some of the skulls laid out for display. Many of them were strange shapes and totally not human. Rayko and Apisa examined some of the artifacts toward the other end of the room, while Flara unrolled the scroll beside the skeleton's hand. After a few moments, Flara waved the others to come to her.
This letter is the record of the former lead mage scholar here. This is the last written report from lead mage scholar Vui Ryu Madaza. The facility is under attack and will soon no doubt be destroyed, or rather emptied of all its human life. I regret the dark depravities that we had to undertake here, but they were necessary for what terrors I have foreseen upon divination of the object. Unfortunately, the safeguards we placed for ourselves have failed, and the Umbarkwi are loose. Even as I write this letter, I can hear the screams of my comrades and subordinates. Though it condemns me a coward, I do not possess the courage to venture out from this office to try and save them. The Umbarkwi are too powerful and too savage. There is an object hidden in the false bottom of my third drawer, a powerful artifact that has allowed us to better understand arcane mysteries beyond our current understanding. However, we were totally wrong about what this artifact was. It must be protected at all costs, and kept away from those who will be sent to find it. Please, do not fail like we did. Keep it away from the Vren. Research over the Vren have been stored in my second drawer. Sincerely, Fuririyu Mazada.
Flara looked up to Apisa, Rayko, and Nori with a sour expression and wondering eyes.
Who or what are the Vren?
I think I may have read about them in some obscure text, but it was back in the Royal Archives back in Xianba. I remember being perplexed by that spelling of that term. I'm not sure what it was. The letter says there's a false bottom in the third drawer. Let's see what this strange artifact is.
Flara opened the drawer and eventually found the secret compartment that had been described. She pulled out an unadorned square box, and she placed it on the desk for all to see. Nori licked his dry lips, and he glanced about the room to double-check that they were indeed alone. Slowly, Flara opened the lid of the box. Resting inside was a triangular metal piece with a surface material that sparkled slightly in the light.
Wow, that's so pretty. What is it?
I have no idea. But if this artifact really needs to be protected, there's only one place we have to go.
And where is that, darling?
Sienba. We have to take this to Sienba. To my mother.